Mojtaba's military aide reveals a bold plan to shatter Trump's Hormuz blockade using precision missile strikes on U.S. naval assets. Mojtaba's aide shocks America by demanding U.S. ground invasion, threatening to capture thousands of hostages in retaliation. U.S. military reportedly lies to Trump, claiming blockade remains unbroken while agencies confirm ships crossing freely. U.S. boasts forcing 10 ships to turn back, but independent reports confirm 7 Iranian vessels successfully crossed the Hormuz Strait. Amid the failed blockade, thousands of U.S. troops face imminent danger as Iranian missiles threaten to sink American warships. Iran officially signals readiness to blockade the Red Sea, positioning Trump's strategy to ignite a dangerous new global energy crisis. Iran has issued fresh military threats against the United States as President Trump's naval blockade on Iranian ports entered its 3rd day around the Strait of Hormuz. On April 15, an advisor to Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei warned the U.S. against attempts to police the Strait of Hormuz and asserted Tehran's control over the waterway. Former IRGC chief Mohsen Rezaei delivered that warning in a televised address, which was reported by the Times of Israel as part of a broader regional update. Mohsen Rezaei, a senior military advisor to Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei, is a long-standing figure in Iran's security establishment and speaks with direct access to top leadership. In a provocative remark during the same address, Rezaei also invited the prospect of a U.S. ground invasion, suggesting that such a move would ultimately benefit Tehran's strategic position. Mohsen Rezaei said, and I quote, "Mr. Trump wants to become the police of the Strait of Hormuz. Is this really your job? Is this the job of a powerful army like the United States? These ships of yours will be sunk by our first missiles and have created a great danger for the U.S. military. They can definitely be exposed to our missiles, and we can destroy them. It would be great if the U.S. launched a ground invasion of Iran, as we would take thousands of hostages, and then for each hostage we would get $1 billion. I am not in favor of extending the ceasefire at all, and this is a personal view." These threats come as the United States presses ahead with its naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, aiming to choke off maritime trade to and from Iranian ports. The U.S. Military Central Command stated that 0 ships had successfully broken through the blockade since it took effect on April 13, claiming tight enforcement. CENTCOM also said that at least 10 ships have been intercepted or redirected within the first 48 hours of the blockade, underscoring an active enforcement posture. However, maritime tracking data has appeared to contradict the U.S. military's claims, according to a report in the Times of Israel. April 14 tracking data showed that at least 3 ships sailing from Iranian ports had already crossed the Strait of Hormuz despite the blockade, the report noted. Those 3 vessels were part of a group of 7 ships that have been recorded crossing the Strait of Hormuz since the blockade began, suggesting some level of leakage. Some vessels that initially took that route later turned back, as reported by the Times of Israel, indicating both uncertainty and attempts to avoid confrontation. Despite Trump's Hormuz blockade, more vessels entered Iranian waters on April 15, according to regional media. The development was reported by Iran's semi-official Fars news agency, which cited commercial ship tracking data to support the claim. One carrier transporting food supplies entered the Gulf and was reported to be en route to Iran's Imam Khomeini port. A supertanker listed under U.S. sanctions also entered Iranian waters on the morning of April 15, defying American measures. The supertanker, which has a 2 million barrel carrying capacity, reportedly reached its destination without any interference. The bulk carrier Christiana, having just unloaded its cargo at the Iranian port of Bandar Imam Khomeini, then exited the Persian Gulf by crossing the Strait of Hormuz shortly after the blockade went into force. Another tanker, Elpis, departed from the Iranian port of Bushehr carrying a methanol shipment and also managed to clear the strait despite the surrounding military restrictions. A third vessel, the Chinese-linked tanker Rich Starry, reportedly passed through the waterway overnight, using an Iranian-preferred route and signaling that some traffic is still finding ways to transit. Analysts have warned that vessel tracking signals and AIS data in the region appear to be increasingly disrupted or deliberately manipulated, making it harder to verify every movement. Meanwhile, the U.S. military says that destroyer-class vessels are actively monitoring and, where necessary, targeting ships operating around Iranian ports and nearby lanes. A U.S. destroyer reportedly intercepted 2 oil tankers that had just departed from the Iranian port of Chabahar, ordering them to turn back, according to a Reuters report. According to U.S. officials, several merchant vessels have already been warned over radio or otherwise redirected away from areas covered by the blockade enforcement zone. Since the blockade took effect on April 13th, more than 20 commercial vessels have still been recorded transiting the Strait of Hormuz, according to a Wall Street Journal report on shipping data. The continued passage of ships suggests either partial enforcement of the blockade or that the measure has not fully shut down all maritime traffic in the critical waterway. Meanwhile, Iran has formally rejected the U.S. move to restrict its trade, insisting that the country cannot simply be blockadable through naval pressure alone. Esmail Baghaei said, and I quote, "The security of the Strait of Hormuz has been ensured by Iran for decades. Iran has been the guardian of this waterway security. The only reason security and safety in this waterway were disrupted during the past 40 days was the U.S. Zionist-imposed war. We are glad that many European countries have the wisdom not to fall into the trap laid by the U.S. and the Zionist regime." As tensions rise around the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has issued a warning indicating the possibility of further escalation at sea. Iranian officials have suggested that trade routes in the Red Sea could also be affected if the U.S. naval blockade in Hormuz continues. Senior military leaders in Iran stated that maritime movement involving exports and imports may be restricted under such conditions. In addition to Hormuz, Iran has also referenced other strategic waterways such as the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman in its warnings. These statements were reportedly conveyed by the commander of Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters. Ali Abdullahi stated that Iran's armed forces would act to prevent trade flows if national interests are threatened. Analysts note that any disruption in the Red Sea could involve allied groups in Yemen, including the Houthis, expanding the scope of the conflict. Iran has also indicated that the ongoing blockade could undermine the fragile ceasefire currently in place with the United States. Officials further stated that Iran would take all necessary measures to safeguard its maritime sovereignty. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has also criticized the U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. He stated that Iran cannot be compelled to alter its position through external pressure, according to Press TV. Pezeshkian also criticized Western responses, describing them as inconsistent in addressing the conflict. He further stated that the ongoing military actions have affected not only leadership structures but also civilian populations. Iran's president said, and I quote, "Iran is not seeking war and instability. Instead, it has always emphasized the importance of dialogue and constructive interaction with all countries of the world. However, any attempt to impose any will on the country or force it to surrender is doomed to fail, and the Iranian nation will never cave into such an approach. What justified military aggression on our country? What justification exists within international law and humanitarian principles for targeting civilians, elites, children, and destroying vital centers such as schools and hospitals?